You're listening to Fusion Patrol, a listener-supported podcast. Each week, we take a single episode of a science fiction TV series, movie, or audio and overanalyze it to within an inch of its life. Welcome to the discussion. Hello and welcome to another episode of Fusion Patrol. I'm Eugene.
And I'm Simon.
And tonight we are looking at Real Humans, Season 2, Episode 5. You know the drill. It's called Episode 5. And a section which I'm now calling Synopsis Bits. Let's see. Roger, Kevin, and Rick's Tale. Roger is given a new assignment at Hubot to collect some Hubots they've obtained legally. Roger refuses to pick one of them up because it's on the street where he lives, but he goes to get the others. At one stop, a studio that makes porn films, Roger picks up a Hubot that Silas has been leasing to them. It is Rick, and he has still got attitude towards Roger. They shut him down and take him back to Hubot for reprogramming. Kevin has been preparing for Real Humans Youth Summer Camp. There's just one problem. He hasn't paid his $500 fee. He goes to Roger and he asks for the money, but because Roger disapproves of the Real Humans group, Kevin doesn't tell him what it's for. Roger hasn't got it, and he tells Kevin some news that might help. Kevin's mother, Therese, is no longer with Rick. Maybe he should call her. He does, and he finds that she really has gotten rid of Rick, but his happiness is short-lived when he finds out she's got a new plastic pal who's fun to play with, and she's thinking of moving abroad with him. At first, Kevin storms out, but he returns, seemingly contrite. His mother is overjoyed and happily gives him the $700 he asks for. At Hubot, Silas has been reprogramming the new acquisitions. More on that later. And he's having a devil of a time with Rick. When he finally does get him reprogrammed, Rick is compliant, but he still has attitude. Until they leave Rick alone with the other Hubots. Then it becomes clear Rick has his own plans for the future. Later, Silas's keys go missing, and we see that Rick has taken them. The hunt for the missing brain. Bee picks Colette's brain and realizes that Nishka was at David Escher's funeral. She may have the missing brain. They head to her house to find her and to find the brain. Jonas, who had previously discovered who owns Escher Transhumanology, reaches out to her. It is his estranged mother who abandoned him at age 7. She also happens to be Nishka, the woman Bee is searching for, and she's the mystery woman who lives a hermit life in the woods and funds the Real Humans college courses. He thinks she must have the code, and he pleads with her. The phone call doesn't go well, but he tries again later by asking for a meeting. She agrees. While they are at the meeting, and Jonas is making his case that he needs the code to live a normal life, Bee and Colette arrive at Nishka's house. First order of business, top up their charge before beginning the search. There's just one problem. This house is cut off from the electrical grid. Bee begins to shut down, but Colette manages to find a car battery and hook her up. While Bee charges, Colette collapses and shuts down. Jonas and Nishka meet. He pleads with her for the code, and while she dances around whether or not she has it or not, she tells him in no uncertain terms that it is not the answer, and she cannot help him. They depart, and she returns home. She calls Jonas and tells him that she doesn't have the code, but she does have David's brain, and then she notices things are amiss and realizes someone is in her house. She finds the deactivated Colette, and Bee jumps her, locking her in the closet. Bee then searches for and finds David's brain, but Nishka has escaped, overpowers Bee, and deactivates her. Florence and Douglas's wedding tale. The happy couple want a traditional wedding, but when a mishap reveals that Florence is a Hubot, the priest is troubled. They try to convince him, but he needs to think about it. Speaking of priests, Gordon is still hanging out with Asa, but he is losing his faith in God and seems to be taking his Children of David thing more seriously. The wedding priest visits Asa. He's having trouble with the idea of marrying a human and a Hubot and seeks Asa's counsel. and later asks her to perform the ceremony in his place. Gordon overhears the conversation and realizes that it is about his sister, Flash. Gordon goes to the wedding with Asa, but outside, his increasingly fanatical pronouncements about humans and Hubots remaining apart finally convince Asa to tell him that it's time for them to part company. The wedding goes ahead and Douglas and Florence are married. Gordon makes a quiet entrance and Florence sees him. She goes out to talk with him. Gordon is rescuing her by getting her away from the humans, but Florence rejects his attempts, sends him away, and returns to the wedding reception. The Engman's Tale. Remember that pickup Roger wouldn't do? It's at the Engman's house. They've sold Vera to Silas, and he picks her up. She doesn't want to go. He later reprograms her with some difficulty to play a part in the Hub battle games. She'll be an innocent bystander with a baby, a role she takes very seriously. Toby and Matilda have been analyzing the code on the USB stick. They've concluded there's something missing, and Matilda suggests that Leo Escher had Mimi memorize something, and perhaps that's what it was. Toby asks Mimi about it. She says what she was given was a key, but that it's useless, and does not give it to him. When he tries to point out that it's the code that gave her life, she doesn't care. But there is more going on in the house. Inger has been invited to Douglas and Florence's wedding, and the whole family minus Sophia are going. Nobody, especially Hans, wants to go, and when Sophia's babysitter has to cancel, Hans magnanimously volunteers to stay home. Nonsense, says Inger. Hubot Leonard can watch after her. Later, when the family have gone, Sophia is trying to do a dancing game with Leonard, but this old white dude Hubot just can't dance. No problem. Sophia just hops online and downloads some free dance moves into Leonard. That's a lot of fun. Now he can do dance steps like the robot, but he's also infected with the Hubot virus, and he begins destroying things. Sophia calls Hans, and after some internal family struggle, they leave the wedding early and return home. The place is a mess, and Leonard is upstairs tearing pages out of books. Inger tries to reason with him, but he resists her attempts to shut him off, and he fights off Hans. Hans uses a stun gun on him, shutting him down. Mimi has overheard all the conversations about Vera being sold and Leonard being deactivated, and later that night, she visits Tobey in his room and gives him the key. She doesn't want it, and she asks him to take care of it. The end. All right, episode 5. What do you think?
I think we've been falling down. We're going to give these episodes titles. So I was thinking A Tale of Two Niskas would be an option, except one of the Niskas isn't actually in it. It's just the other Niska. So it would be more the tale of the second Niska, which doesn't scan as well. So I'm going to go with the simpler Upgrading the Babysitter, which obviously was the most important event that occurred in this episode.
Yeah. I can only imagine where that's going. And it's not going to be good. Tobey's got the code, Tobey's got the key, and they've got a deactivated Hubot. This is not going to go well.
Who has
That's
the virus?
got the virus.
Presumably.
Yeah. It's unclear. Can you clean the virus out? You can scan for it, but can it be fixed?
I mean, I don't know that we've seen it, but I think I'd kind of assumed that if you do a complete wipe, then okay. I don't know. That was my assumption that if that would work with a computer that was infected with a virus, if you had no other means of quarantining the virus, you could just do a clean reinstall, no backup.
Why wouldn't then, just to carry that a step further, why wouldn't Silas just start with a complete wipe? I mean, I've worked IT for years, and the first thing we do whenever, moving a machine to a different person or repurposing is, you don't, a Windows machine anyway, you don't just go, oh yeah, this machine's fine. No, you nuke it from orbit, right? You go back to factory default, and then you load 5 years of Windows updates on it. and then put it back into operation.
But are you talking about Rick?
Never. Yes, I am talking about Rick because he doesn't do that, and presumably
But
there's
doesn't
a
he think he
reason.
has? I mean, we can see that he hasn't, or that it hasn't worked.
Right. Okay. Well, that's kind of where I'm getting at, is like, I don't know that that's what he did, because he said reprogrammed. He didn't say, we'd say nuke it, but, I wiped him and restarted. He's never saying that. He's like, I've gone in and I've been working on reprogramming it. But even if he did
I mean, to
wipe
be
him
fair, that
and
doesn't
try
seem
to
to be
start
what
it from
he's
the ground up.
doing. It doesn't seem to be what he's doing with Vera. Like with Vera, he
Right.
appears to be taking her existing settings and what have you, and adding to them or adjusting them. So maybe that is what he's doing with Rick.
I would kind of imagine that the Vera model, probably the factory reset puts it back to default caregiver. I mean, firmware of some kind. Anyway, but what I'm getting at is that if he tried to wipe Rick and it did not succeed, then wiping Leonard is not going to clear the virus. Wiping a virus laden is not necessarily going to clear the virus, because
It's
there's
not
obviously
necessarily
something
going
that
to, but
retains. Yeah.
the kind of narrative twist that I took from this, whether it is what is intended by the writers or not, is that what Silas has been doing has in effect been a reset of some sort. Because I mean, ultimately, there's never a complete reset, is there? You're always you're relying on the firmware at some level. There is code that is running the system that you don't bother to kind of flash, and the sense I'm getting from this is that there is some memory pocket in Rick's system where he is storing some of his personality, some of his memories that Silas hasn't reached. But that whatever Silas is doing, and I'm not saying Silas is the most conscientious IT professional there has ever been, he's probably just doing the quickest wipe that does the job, whatever works, rather than necessarily reformatting the hard drive 35 times to ensure that everything is overwritten.
Jonas, who does appear to have a solid knowledge of Hubot programming, seems to trust Silas's skills, as if he knows that Silas is competent at his job.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that Silas isn't good. I'm more saying that Silas isn't necessarily
conscientious.
Not well. I was going to say conscientious, but actually, it may not be Jonas's priority that when he's dealing with the Battleland Hubots, that he does Jonas wants them to be safe, to do the job, not cause a problem, but also to do it quickly and cheaply and not spend ages doing something that is, as far as they're aware, unnecessary.
Yeah, I suppose. It's just it is so hard to divorce in my mind that even something as stupid as a Windows computer, you just have to nuke it. You just have to. It's like it just is not going to work.
Yeah, but it's not going to work in what sense? It's like the risks are there if you're in business or you're in government or any kind of an organization where you've got data protection to think about, and bluntly, that reputational damage is a consideration, whereas this is Hub Battleland. It's I kind of think the people who are customers are not going to care about this as much.
One of those Hubots kills somebody, your reputational damage is done. And if any of those computers get viruses, right? I mean, it's a rampant virus.
The virus issue. The virus issue is an issue because it'll stop you being able to be operational and make money until you've put a lot of time into cleaning off the virus off all of your Hubots. So that is something they're going to care about. The Hubot actually killing someone, yes, that's going to be reputational damage that I guess they would care about. But in an insurance office, a Hubot attacking someone or causing a minor injury, would be an absolute disaster. In Hub Battleland, I think they might think that they would be able to sort of say, oh well,
you signed a waiver.
Yeah, exactly, and it's part of what you get. And if you want to sue us in court, then we'll make the case that you're engaging in violent activities, and this is the kind of thing that is a risk of the sport, as it were, rather than something that we can completely indemnify you against.
And I know I'm deviating from, we were talking about Leonard, and we'll definitely come back to that whole thing. But since we are on the subject kind of Hubot Land and Rick, so I remember asking during season 1, or you asking, I remember one of us asking and us discussing what the heck it was Leo was doing to those Hubots. Because we see that he unlocks a dominatrix bot, and by the end of the episode, she has murdered the owner, quote unquote. And at the time, we were like, is he freeing these Hubots? Or is it just an act that he's turning up what they can do to 11, and because it was a risky game that they were playing sexually, that he got killed, and we did not have an answer to that. And then, of course, he does Rick, and Rick is getting aggressive and arrogant. But in last season, it was mostly about him wanting to have sex, because that's what Therese asked for, right? She wanted something a little bit more sexy, a little bit more initiative, a little bit more so if you can imagine, I want a dominatrix that can dominate me. That's taking dominatrix up to 11. And in Rick's case, that's taking sexbot up to 11. Maybe not dominating sexbot, but sexbot. But in this episode, it feels like Rick's got his own agenda. And so I come back to the question, was Leo trying to cause problems? Or is this just because Leo is so good at making them more real that it's crossed a line where, we're now at a sort of not maybe the level of B and Mimi, but they've still gone beyond whatever, or, deliberate, accidental. I don't know, because we never really got a feel for Leo by the end of this. Was he trying to bring about the downfall of mankind? Or
there's an agenda. There are different agendas that have common cause for part of the journey, I think, which is the kind of protection of the Hubots and the freeing of the Hubots so that they can live their lives as free entities. And there is the downfall of the humans. And I guess the argument has been that for those who want to bring about the downfall of the humans is that you cannot be free as Hubots and let the humans live, because the humans have been oppressors and will always be oppressors and are incapable of change, etc., etc. But they're kind of there are people with different positions amongst the group, and we don't know where Leo has sat in this. And you're right, yeah, we do not know what Leo was doing to Rick.
Of all the people in this show, for us not to know what he was doing, Leo is the most problematic because he was such a driver of season 1.
But we don't know yet. But what I'm wondering is this still a theme? Is this still a question that we're going to come back to? Because although it didn't occur to me while I was watching it, thinking about it while you were talking just now, I wondered whether Rick's immunity to whatever Silas was doing to him was because of what Leo had done. Like not just a byproduct of having, been an enhanced Hubot, but been something that Leo deliberately did to protect him from wipes or ordinary wipes. Or
I do think it's something that he did that is above and beyond the norm for a Hubot programming. I don't know if it's intentionally to avoid wipes or whether it's to avoid all the safety systems that, you operate at the kernel level instead of
Yeah. I mean,
at the
clearly, Rick is qualitatively different from all of the other. Well, not all of the other Hubots, because you've obviously got Odie in there as well. But there is something different about Rick, and that is definitely because of what Leo did. But I wonder whether what Leo did was more specifically intended to ensure that he couldn't be wiped or overwritten by someone like Silas doing what Silas is doing, and that we're going to come back to what Leo's agenda is.
and ask ourselves, how many Hubots did Leo modify while he was working at the Hubot brothel?
Yeah.
For weeks in power or whatever he was. Yeah.
The other thing that occurred to me while you were reminding me of the reason that Therese took Rick to be upgraded into a more someone who takes more
Manly.
initiative, etc. Yeah, is that she's now dumped him in favor of Liam, who, based on the kind of the way in which Hubots in this series present, is a completely unmodified, a kind of much more conventional, conforming Hubot who doesn't have any of these modifications, is incapable of taking initiative or whatever. That she's sort of decided that actually, you know what, that wasn't what I wanted after all.
Yeah. She's learned her lesson. Although that cheesy mustache, I'm not convinced that's factory. I feel like she just stuck that on him. But yeah. Did you, while we're briefly talking about Therese, did you notice that there was, if I'm going to put an argument that says writers sometimes actually do things intentionally that are meant to be thematic, that this story has Kevin, betrayed child, going to his mother, still being betrayed child, and then trying to use her for his own ends, which is exactly what Jonas is doing. Also betrayed child.
Yeah.
Who, returns back and sounds like he'll do anything he can to get what he wants out of her. So I thought, it can't be a, well, I guess it could be a coincidence. Could be just the idea, but yeah.
Yeah, because I think the broader theme that we've come to through the series as a whole is this idea of parenthood, the whole child of David thing that we keep hearing as a mantra in the second series. This idea of the difference between a parent as being someone who just created you, whether biologically or mechanically, as opposed to someone who, well, parented you, who brought you up and who enabled you to become who you are.
Yeah. It probably is. Oddly enough, I don't have any notes here about Leonard. So I guess we should just go into Leonard. And
before we leave Rick and Therese, I just want to note that because we talked about them back in, I think, episode 1, maybe episode 2 of the second series, not being in it, because it felt like their plot line had run its course and we were now focusing on Roger and Kevin, and they were there in the background being mentioned. The reveal of Roger, of Rick turning around and Roger seeing who he was, that was a great surprise moment, because they've waited 4 episodes for me to feel pretty confident that Rick's not coming back, and then
really,
bam. Yeah, I thought, no, they've not. Either he's gone off to do another job, or they've cut costs, so they needed to lose some of the regulars, or whatever it was.
To be fair, I mean, I when he refused to pick up one of the Hubots, I thought, and I don't know how I thought that, but when he said that, I'm like, it's got to be Rick. He didn't want to go get Rick, and then Silas asked him. He says, "It's on my street," and I didn't clock it that it was Vera. I should have, because they even had it in the previously on. We've got too many robots. We'll get rid of Vera. But when he walked into the place that was obviously the porn studio, I knew it was Rick. And it was instant, because the poster of Rick was on the wall, although you couldn't see his face. But remember, they showed him on the DVD cover. Odie showed him on the DVD covers.
Yeah, yes.
I'm not even going to say the name of the film, but because I can't. But that poster was on the wall as they walked by, and of course, a Hubot sitting there turned around. I was like, "Oh yeah, it's Roger. Who else is it going to be?" But yeah. But I didn't know it until I was suspecting Rick's return at the moment he started rejecting the slip. But so that leads me to a question then about Roger. Is he hiding his job? Why not go pick up a Hubot at the Engman's house? Is he embarrassed? It's like, he knows the Engmans. He saw the address. They know him. He goes, yeah, I'm here to pick you. Selling a Hubot. I'm here to pick it up. This is my job now. It's honest.
Guess so. I don't know.
I just thought that was, yeah. Also, while we're on the subject then, I hadn't noticed this until this episode, so it sounds to me like Hans was made redundant by Hubots.
I didn't pick that up.
Oh, because Magnus at the wedding was looking at Mimi, right? Who's basically is taking his job, or taking a job at his agency. And
yeah,
then he turns around and he talks to Hans, and he says, "Oh, you were in insurance, weren't you, or something?" And he goes, "Banking at 15 years." He says, "Yeah, that's the way it is now. It is one day they're out." And I'm like, "Oh, it's a Hubot thing." I mean, why couldn't a Hubot do banking better than a human? Like, oh yeah. But we haven't seen anything like Roger level resentment.
No,
with
sure.
Hans. We've just been completely like, Hans just doesn't have a job. Don't know why. And he doesn't seem to be really trying very hard to get one. But I just kind of wondering if that was...
I think you could be right. That was too subtle for me, partly because I think the how it is now, that's just how it is now thing is just that is not, it's not how it is now. It's like, it's how it's always been. It's businesses change in multiple ways, including the development of technology, but not limited to it. And people get laid off, and it does just happen. It does just happen overnight. And I know people to whom that has happened. And I was more kind of focused on his insensitivity in the way that he was talking. But I think you could be right. I think the theme may be intended to be around Hubots. It will be interesting to see how that plays out, because Hans, going right back to the beginning, was the kind of, we don't want a Hubot in the house. We don't need that. It wasn't a kind of Roger style hatred for Hubots. It was, was it that way round?
Yeah, it was. It was Inger.
And he wanted one.
Because, they were never getting anything done, and they didn't have any time.
You're right. Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
But then he was busy with a job at the time.
It would be hypocritical if he was now criticizing the Hubots when he had been the one arguing they want one.
Well, now wait a minute. I don't know that that's, I mean, I guess you could call it hypocritical, but I'm gonna stand in defense that, you could have somebody who, I don't know, let's get contentious here on the subject of AIs, not necessarily LLMs, but the various AI model things that are working, like weather prediction and medicine development and things that have started to prove valuable beyond having a chat bot that you can have chat sex with. People are going to lose their jobs over those things. And you could be like working, say, in a weather forecasting thing, and these models are so good. And I'm using this because Google has one that has now proven to be better at it than all the other models that we've been using over the years. I don't know whether it's gone into implementation yet, but in the testing phase, it's now better than what the weather services are using, the national weather services are using. And you could be in that field and you could look at it and this is amazing. This is going to revolutionize what we do. We should definitely use this. And then 6 months later, find out, oh, wait, I don't have a job anymore. And I didn't think that through. And so is that being hypocritical when you change your mind and go, no, something, I'm not so crazy about this after all? Or is that just learning your lesson the hard way? I don't know.
It could be both. I think arguably, yes, if you're taking one side of the argument against someone who is forecasting what actually happens, and then when it happens, you're kind of going, hey, how come no one told me about this? Or this is terrible. I think that would be hypocritical. And
all right.
So
but if you were blindsided by it, like,
yeah, but has he been? I mean, he's not complaining about it. He's not complaining about it. So I'm not actually calling him a hypocrite.
Yeah.
But if he were, I think it would be hard to say that he had been blindsided by it, because
he's on a journey.
Those arguments were taking place right from the initial premise of the show. And
yeah,
he was arguing with Inge about whether or not they should take advantage of this in their home. And you're absolutely right. It's people can perfectly well change their mind or realize that what they were thinking was, this will change things, but it won't affect me. And in some ways, it's not the technology that's to blame. It's kind of never the technology that's to blame, because if a machine if 75% of your job is doing something that suddenly a machine can come along and do, oftentimes that is the stuff that is the least valuable. It's stuff that needs to be done, but the real highly skilled stuff is the 25%. And now you can spend 100% of your job doing the really valuable stuff. And that is what drives the growth, because suddenly you have massive capacity to do difficult stuff that you didn't have people who could spend time on to do it before. But it does depend. It doesn't always work out like that. And sometimes the skills that people have developed are the same. They're skills to do things that the technology is better at doing. And then it's not a question of you can spend all of your time doing the stuff that you're really good at, because suddenly all of the stuff you were really good at is gone and you need to retrain.
Yeah, not everybody has a job that's multimodal. I mean,
right.
If you
right. I was thinking in terms of weather forecasters, is that there is always going to be value for, as the models get better and as the speed with which you can run the simulations and interpret them gets faster and faster, the appetite will still be there for models that are, if they're 97% accurate, that are 98% accurate and 99% accurate, but even more so, that are not just 1 day or 2 day forecasts, but are 1 week or 2 week forecasts that you just simply wouldn't have been able to process the data on before. So there are some scenarios where you can think, yes, the technology will come along and take over what people are doing now, but that won't necessarily make the people redundant.
Except, of course, capitalism.
That was my kind of underlying point, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. sometimes you have to spell it out. Sometimes you just have to call it out and say, point the finger right at the capitalism. Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking there at the point, I was imagining this office of weather forecasters. It has 4 people in it, right? And 75% of each of their work is doing something that's, can be replaced by the computer. And then 25% of their work is doing something that, is beyond the computer. And as you were describing that scenario, my first thought was, or you just need one guy doing it 100% of his time, and you could get rid of the other 3 because that's cheaper.
And it is capitalism is a blunt tool, and too often the incentive is to cut costs. But that doesn't necessarily mean the markets don't work or can't work to bring the, but at the same time maybe not. It's a question of whether you bring the price down for the end user or whether you provide them with more value. And that may, and obviously the technology itself comes with a cost. And where do you find the financing for that? Job cuts. Okay. So I guess the argument is never solely about the technology itself. It's always about the system, which is capitalism, in by which we make the decisions about it.
So, in a scene that was one of the single most painful things I've ever watched on television, without doubt, can you take a stab at what it was? It was just
I can, and I'm
knife.
going to totally disagree.
Okay, what do you think it is?
I think it's Leonard's dancing, which is phenomenal.
No, it's not.
No?
It's not. It's not Leonard's dancing.
All right.
It's when Sophia goes to the computer and types in whatever she typed in, and then it's like, free dance moves plug in. Plonk. That is one of the most painful things I've ever seen. No, that's just like, I want to, you want to, when you've got a office full of users and they're doing that kind of stuff all the time, you just want to take and put razor blades on the edges of their laptop screen and then slam it on their fingers. Yeah, I have some unresolved issues about that kind of stuff. So,
I mean, to be fair, Leonard
don't let her have a computer.
She's not. Leonard isn't the office computer.
Is she so blind to the world that she doesn't know about the Hubot virus? I mean, she's not that young anymore.
That is surprising.
I mean, I started at a very obviously in IT, so that makes a difference. I started at a very young age with my kids about, don't block them off from the computers when they're young from doing things like that. But then the second piece of that is make them understand why. Because you can't block them off forever. And I can't even speak what I wrote in my notes as that scene was playing out. It's like, pause the playback for a while, take a break, go play some video games or something, and then come back. It's like, all right, I'll pick it up now. This is not good. Yeah, no, his dancing was fine. I mean, I do think it was.
Excellent. I'm glad we can.
I do think it was. The fact that I don't know if it's brilliant or if it's just hokey that their choice was the robot, right? I mean, it's like, okay, that's if you have a Hubot dancing the robot, that is hokey. But if you think about the fact that a kid found a plugin that some jerk wrote on the internet, there's probably a guy who thought, it'll be funny to make it the robot. So I can totally see it. It does play into a certain programmer's mindset. So I could totally get it, because it'd be like, I'm so clever. I can just hear it in the mind. But yeah, Yeah, that was okay. I think he also did little bits of the moonwalk, didn't he? I'm not sure. I'm not really up on that. I think the spinning dance
I don't
steps
know,
were.
but it all looked pretty slick to me. Given that it's a nice
An old white
performance.
dude Hubot.
He's played the real guy, who is obviously getting on a bit and not necessarily as nimble. And I think he was about 71 at the point that this is filmed, so the actor himself is not necessarily super nimble, but he's now playing a machine who's capable of doing all of these different things. And the performance is so convincing in terms of that, because he just does look totally out of character, which is wonderful.
There are a couple scenes though where they cut back to like foots, cut back to his feet.
Yeah, I
And
wondered
I'm
about
going to say
that.
those are definitely professional, like doing the spin steps and whatnot on the ground. But
Yeah.
yeah. Ah, Sophia, what have you done? You have unleashed the monster, and Toby and Matilda are going to finish it. Yeah, I'm sure next time we're going to. Yeah, they're going to say a whole lot more about that. During the course of this episode, Mimi is just taking in the way of the world, isn't it? I mean, she's there overhearing them selling Vera and saying, "We've got too many Hubots in this house."
Yeah.
Does she think they mean her?
I think, I mean, I don't know it's as simple as that. It's extraordinarily tactless. Yeah, I don't think the point of Mimi overhearing that was necessarily directly that she feels that it's about her so much as that it creates an inequality in that they wouldn't say there are too many humans in the house. They're saying there are too many Hubots in the house. But Vera is there for a purpose. She's there to fulfill a function in the way that the toaster or the washing machine are there to fulfill a function. And so, yeah, because you wouldn't say that about the humans are going to feel secure in their position, whereas Mimi is perhaps going to feel that, okay, it's okay for there to be two Hubots, and she's one of those two Hubots now. But if another Hubot were to come along that was higher up the pecking order than she is, then it would be bye-bye Mimi.
I mean, and also there is the bit where Silas is like, "What, you got more than one? You want to sell some others?" So I mean, she also overheard that part.
True.
Put the thought. So you better mind your P's and Q's, Mimi, or we'll just sell you to Hubot Battleland. And she also, I don't know that she must have figured out what was going on there with Leonard. I don't know that she realizes he has the virus, but you could, and I'm sure that the kids could interpret this way if they, particularly Sophia, if they don't understand about the Hubot virus, that Leonard's not behaving the way they want him to, and so Dad's just going to go up and stun him, kind of zap him. It does sound violent. They didn't see what happened up in the room or what was going on. So Mimi's down there with the kids. So maybe she would also see that as them treating Leonard not human. Basically, you wouldn't do that if your granddad was having a fit.
No.
Of that kind. You would not go down and get the stun gun. It just... So...
But then that still
the granddad couldn't have fought him off.
That leaves the question of how Mimi sees Vera or how Mimi sees Leonard, because it's hard to imagine that she sees them as equals in some way.
I would think,
and yet the way the humans are talking, they're putting her, because they're talking about the number of Hubots in the house, they're putting her in a category with them rather than a category apart.
Well, see, now that's her problem, because when they said there's too many Hubots in the house, both Hans and Inger were only talking about Leonard and Vera, and they weren't even thinking of Mimi as a Hubot. But Mimi doesn't know that.
Right.
And of course, I don't know that either. I'm making that up. But, I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
So, and it was those two fighting that got this situation to occur. The Vera and Leonard. I am your Hubot, blah, 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 and they got into a little slappy match or something, as I recall. Let's see, and of course she gives the code, or she gives the key to Toby, and I don't know. I'm just going to call it right here. I'm thinking that's a bad idea. She says she doesn't want it anymore. So you can interpret that many different ways. Like, she doesn't want the responsibility anymore. She doesn't want to know anything. She doesn't want to have anything to do with it anymore. Has she erased it from her memory? Because, if she's written it down and she doesn't want it anymore, then, because she does say that, I don't want it anymore. I don't want the key.
Yes,
I don't
but
want
isn't that well, I mean, maybe she has erased it. I took that to be the responsibility of having sole custody of this secret, but I don't know.
It could be that. Do you think seeing Gordon had anything to do with that decision? She's being reminded of all the people who are out there. She didn't see what Gordon and Florence were talking about that we know of, but she did see him and go, oh yeah, there's another one out there. They're still sitting around. She doesn't probably even know Nishka is dead.
No.
Nishka 1, Mark 1. So, I just have a note that Odie seems to be increasingly deranged. Silas doesn't seem to be remotely worried about that.
I love the fact that he can make that because we haven't really seen how do Hubots produce speech, and it could be through something that replicates the way in which air is forced through a set of vocal cords or whatever, or it could just be a very high fidelity speaker, which it clearly is because he can do sound effects, which was very funny. I did like that.
Okay, I should combine these together, but we'll start with, why does Nishka Mark II live without power?
No idea.
Because they did refer to her last time. And again, I am sort of drawing a conclusion, but I don't think I'm drawing a crazy conclusion here, that in the last episode or the episode before, I forget which, Ava was saying that this Real Humans college course is being paid for by an old hermit woman who lives in the forest. And they pushed in on that house, and this is the same house. So I'm assuming that this is the old hermit woman who is paying for the course, which she's obviously getting the money from Aisher transhumanology, which is even funnier. But I just want to, it's like, okay, you live without power, but you have a landline, which, requires power. I mean, it doesn't require mains power, but it's still so it's not an electricity thing, and she's got batteries and an inverter for something.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just the kind of living off the grid thing, a bit like the real humans wearing their natural fabrics, and this kind of back to nature, holding technology at arm's length, or at least the kind of survivalist, independent notions that go along with the kind of real humans philosophy.
All right, that could be. I was wondering if she just lived far enough out in the forest that she figured if any of the children of David came for her, they'd need a charge before they could do anything, and they wouldn't have any power. That could be defeated by driving a car, of course.
Yeah,
which you apparently can do because Nishka pulls up in a car. What I want to ask is, so A, is Nishka a common name? Or is this not a coincidence? Because we did have the picture that said, Nishka, the picture of the family. And I asked the question, is season 1 Nishka supposed to be a young representation of season 2 old Nishka?
I think so.
Because I think so too.
She was cloned and then has aged.
Oh, do you think it's the same? She's actually been cloned too. Okay. Maybe that's why she's... Oh, I hadn't thought about that. I don't know why I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, okay. So that could be what old Nishka was like, or young Nishka was like, and that she has since being cloned, she has turned into what she is. Okay. So now here's my next question. B, when she killed Nishka for no obvious reason, because clearly they are working to the same goal. She killed Nishka Mark 1 for no apparent reason. At the time, we thought maybe B was less radicalized than Nishka, but clearly she is not by the season 2 behaviors. She sneered at Nishka's name in this. And I think she kind of just showed a bit of distaste at the pictures too that showed Nishka. And I'm wondering if it's this. So David Escher has got this beautiful wife, B, who dies, and he clones her into or he's working on cloning her into a Hubot. And then Nishka, who is also working with him, becomes his new romantic partner because she's a human. And so is B jealous? Is this a jealousy love triangle thing? Is this why Nishka left Jonas's dad to, the whole kind of messy thing that happens? And I'm putting it out there, that B just does not like B, the dead wife does not appreciate the widower's new main squeeze. It's this is odd wherever they're going with Nishka, and I hope we do find out that this was not something that they were planning on revealing in season 3. I also think if I were B, if I were a Hubot that had free will, I think I would wear some sort of plate or something over my off switch.
Probably a good idea.
They have those little plastic covers that you can get that you can bolt onto a light switch to stop the kids from turning them off. I would totally be doing that if I were a sentient being and didn't want to be jumped by somebody and turned off. Anyway. Okay. I also say, just out of curiosity, whether this will have any play. If this is in fact the same, this is Nishka, old lady. If Ava was radicalized by the fact that Nishka Mark 1 was chasing her with a knife, how would she feel if she knew, maybe she does, how would she feel if she knew that Nishka Mark 1 is the prototype for that work? Or would it matter? She'd go, well, yeah, I get why you hate him, so I'm with you. Or if she saw a picture of her, like when she goes to her house, she sees a picture of her young and sees who that was, will she freak out? I'm curious as to how those two got together and getting. We also see the scene where Jonas takes Silas out to. Remember, in a previous episode, he said, I think of you as a friend. And we see in this episode, he takes him up for a beer and sits there and spills his guts about his mom and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And then Silas is like, yeah, okay, got to go back to work now. And I get how that might be uncomfortable, but at the same time, what's that telling us about how Silas really feels about Jonas? He does not consider him a friend? Because it feels to me like the moment. It feels to me like the moment when if your friend is sitting there and he wants to spill to you about his childhood problems, this is the time to sit there and grin and bear it. This is just what you do for your friends. It's like, he needs to get this out. Just sit there and listen, nod, let him do the thing. But he doesn't. He leaves. And that seems such and it obviously it affects Jonas. He's like, well, yeah. And I'm thinking Jonas thinks it's because I'm hideous, because I'm sure Jonas thinks that's all of his ills are because of his face now, because that's where he's going with this, right? Okay, let's talk about Flo and Douglas. Did Albert know that Flo was a Hubot so that he grabbed and pulled her cord?
Yes, because what's his name? Florentine's new husband,
Douglas,
thank you. Douglas says that to him, that's something that we keep secret, when he's strapping him in the car afterwards.
Yeah, but that's afterwards. But I mean beforehand, before he grabbed the cord and was pulling it, was he aware that she had a cord and that's why he did it?
Yes.
Or was he...
Yes.
Okay. Well, how did he find out?
Well, I guess they told him.
Oh, wow, that's progressive. That's going straight back to the ex-wife. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Because I'm thinking when he said this is one of those secrets, it's like, is that really going to work? No, it's not. That is not going to work. There's just no way. I'll tell you what, though, I am impressed at Douglas's staying power, because when they came back after Flo came back and they were dancing quite vigorously there on the dance floor, I thought Douglas was a dead man for sure. Right? He has not got long to live. I don't. There is no way this story progresses forward without us having to take into account what happens with his heir, his wife, who is not a legal entity and has been married under false pretenses. What happens? And his dad works for owns a law firm. There has to be a link there. Douglas must die.
100%
I'm
agree.
shocked he didn't die today. But, and when they really started going for it, very, very vigorous, active dancing, I thought, yep, this is it. This is it. He's dead. He's dead. Nope. Kind of. I mean, I'm not wishing the character ill, but, sometimes you look at a character and say, they must die to progress the story forward. And they've given us the Chekhov's sudden death illness that could happen at any moment. So
they need to give him a red jersey as well, don't they?
Yeah. Maybe he'll have a red tie one day, and then that'll be it. Keep watching for that. That'll be his last day. So, now we have to get to the religious part of the story. I don't like what they're doing with Gordon. So, in the first season, we have these freed Hubots, and they are out on their own. They are all beginning to express individuality. They're all like searching for a purpose. And although I don't like it, and I think it is without doubt always the wrong answer, Gordon finds God to give him meaning to his meaningless existence, or seemingly meaningless existence. And maybe they were always going for his personality is the kind who will become a fanatic from the very beginning. He's it is interesting. I mean, I don't like it, but it is interesting that the religion thing pops up there and he takes it on board wholehearted. It's like, it's interesting that a Hubot does this. It reflects upon free will and upon the need that we people feel that they have to have an answer, that they have to have something behind just, you're here. And so that's interesting. But now that they've co-opted him and given him his, remember, you're a child of David, and he's gone into that child of David mode, he seems to be getting increasingly fanatical. And I'm wondering if that is what the programming did, or whether that is a side effect of introducing that programming into his religious fervor that he's been building on his own. If that question makes sense.
It makes sense. I still feel that it's not clear what this child of David thing does. So, and that's to the kind of detriment of the storylines where it's coming into effect, because it creates an ambiguity, but it's not particularly an interesting ambiguity. Whereas before, those kind of tensions, the ones you're talking about between the free will and the programming, and the way in which that free will is exercised, and what role religion plays in that, and other forms of zealotry, all of those are quite interesting and quite complex already. you add this other thing into there and you can't actually tell what's going on, the answers it provides are less interesting than the ones that we were facing previously. So I dislike it still.
The only thing I have left on my notes is just, if I haven't said this before, I think I might have last week, but I'm just going to pop it out there again. I'm still get this gut feeling that the Jonas clone will not want to be overwritten. I think having him actually present in the room and party, well, overhearing party, to Jonas explaining what he's trying to do and treating the Jonas clone as if it is as if it's a TV.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because the clone is sort of saying, Jonas is explaining what happened to him, to Jonas, telling it about his own life. And the clone is asking questions, but asking it in the first person plural. So, were we upset? Not were you upset, but were we upset? He identifies himself as being the same person. It's kind of weird. It's interesting, and I'm wondering where it's going because it suggests that he isn't going to end up being overwritten, or at least not directly. But I'm not really sure what it's leading to.
I'm wondering if, all right, let's take a stab at this. Nishka has overpowered B and turned her off. Colette's off, so there is no hope for either of them coming back online without third-party intervention. And seems pretty fair that Nishka is not going to reactivate them. I doubt very much that B at least is out of the program, but we have seen that Nishka is now willing to give the brain to Jonas. So I think Jonas is going to be able to use the brain to recreate the key, and he too will also manage to recreate the code somehow, get the final product, because that's what they said. They needed a Hubot brain that had the code in it, and maybe they could decompile it. And I think that's true because we saw Nishka destroy a brain to make sure that nobody could get hold of it. So Escher must have that concern as well. So he's going to recreate the code. I'm kind of wondering if the Jonas clone will be able to take it upon himself to load that code onto himself. Or will Jonas be stupid enough to load that code onto him to see how it goes? Could be either one of those approaches.
Jonas definitely is, yes, but yeah, interesting.
But I think it's inevitable that what I was getting at is I think it's inevitable that Jonas will get the code. I think it's inevitable that Toby will have the code, and I think it's inevitable that Jonas will have the code, both of them. And I honestly have no clue where the Real Humans with Kevin plotline is going, unless they need them for some sort of a military force later in the series. Force of destruction, because they're not going to accomplish anything politically. I don't see that happening. That's just too slow of a pace. Do you have anything else?
I noted that because it said 500 Swedish, it said $500. It said $500, which seemed like an awfully large amount for Therese to just hand over without batting an eyelid, or indeed for Kevin to expect that Roger would hand over. And I just checked what 500 kroner are at today's exchange rates, and it was $50 or £40. I don't know what it would have been 12 years ago, but that seemed more plausible. So,
okay, well, as an experienced summer camp runner, $500 is barely enough to cover your expenses. Okay. We used to, because we were a nonprofit, we used to set ours at, how much the camp costs, how much the food costs, and divide it by the capacity of the camp.
I wasn't thinking about it as like in terms of costs.
600,
to be honest.
It was about $600 for us in the,
yeah.
Well, starting about the time this episode aired.
Yeah, so, because I'm not listening to the Swedish, I don't know that wasn't already translated into. It just seemed an awful lot for Theresa to just, can I borrow some money from you? How much do you want? 500? No, 700. Just hand it over. But
I can kind of see a very guilty parent if she has the money. First off, it has to be not like Roger. But what didn't work for me in that scene was that he says, "Oh, well, can I have $700?" And she says, "Sure." And she just pulls it out of her pocket and hands it to him in a few notes. Right. Now, that is not realistic. That's like, well, can I write you a check? It's like, I think. So it did feel like she was handing him $40, $60, not $700. But again, if the camp is being heavily subsidized by Nishka in the woods, then why bother to take any money at all from them?
Yeah, don't know.
Right, and in fact, I will go a for-profit camp is going to be closer to $2,000 a week, at least in the United States, and we could work on the assumption that this is supposed to be a fundraiser, and that they're trying to get money. In which case, $500 just isn't going to cut it, or they're subsidizing it. In which case, why charge them at all if it's being done by a donor? You let the kids in as cheaply as you can because you're trying to brainwash them, which I'm gonna go out here and say, because many summer camps are that. Science camp is not that real. I mean, band camp is not that. Sports camp is not that. But the vast majority of summer camps in the United States are religious summer camps, and they are. The church pays a huge amount of their money because get them while they're young. Get them while they're young. So the whole bit about this being a camp did kind of rub me the wrong way. It's like, yeah, okay, I can totally see this, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. So, yeah, but I totally get it. All right, well, next time, I think we are going to be looking at the episode entitled Episode 6. And I'll let you have some time to think about your new title for it. And
I need to watch it first, probably.
Well, okay, if you're going to go that far. How about I think it's going to be called The Death of Douglas.
Okay, we'll call it that anyway.
Flo the Widow.
Of what happens.
Yeah. Simon, thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure, as always.
And listeners, I do hope you'll join us all again next time on Fusion Patrol. This has been Fusion Patrol. Thanks for listening. If you're enjoying this podcast, we hope you'll consider supporting us at buymeacoffee.com/fusionpatrol or patreon.com/fusionpatrol. For our Patreon subscribers, we're currently running a special series on Babylon 5. Come join the conversation and find other content at fusionpatrol.com. You can contact us on social media, where our Fediverse address is @podcast@fusionpatrol.com or by email at feedback@fusionpatrol.com. Fight the Future by Amberwolf is our theme music. You can find more from Amberwolf at bandcamp.com. This has been a Lone Locust production.